of the innovators that the NASA iTech program brings together. So while the judges deliberate now, my fellow iTech coach and strategist, Tom Flake, is going to lead a discussion with a few of our iTech alumni and discuss the emerging private sector space economy. So I hope you enjoy not only learning about this growing area of the economy, but also get a glimpse into a few more of the amazing companies that have been through the NASA iTech program that Tom and I have been able to work with over the years. So when they're done, our judges will return.
And Dan Nevius from Analytical Space. And I want to ask each of you, if you would, maybe we'll go ladies first and then space industries and analytical space. If you could just introduce yourself, your company, and tell us a little bit about when you participated in NASA iTech.
Sure. Thank you very much, Tom, for the introduction. I'm Negar Feher. I'm our VP of Business Development at Momentous. Momentous participated in NASA iTech about a year ago. It was like July of 2019. Yeah, we were one of the top 10 finalists, and then we were selected as one of the top 3. So we were very honored a year ago and excited to be back.
And Josh?
I get myself off mute. So CEO of Space Industries. Yeah, we participated in Cycle 2 last year, which is pretty much exactly a year ago. It was a great experience. And now we're back here again. So it's very exciting.
Just can't escape. Dan?
My name is Dan Nevius, one of the co-founders and CEO of Analytical Space. We participated back in 2018, so I guess a year before Negar and Josh. Excited to be back and looking forward to the discussion.
Well, welcome to all of you. I know each of you prepared just a couple slides to introduce our audience to your company and a little bit about what you're doing. Maybe we could go in the same order. Negar, will you go ahead and start off? Robin, can you bring the slides up?
Thank you. Sorry. Can you all hear me? Okay. So at Momentous, we provide connecting flights for satellites. And just like you would get a connecting flight on an airline, it's always cheaper than a direct flight. We're just taking that same business model to space. And we basically aggregate payloads, put them on top of our orbit transfer vehicles, integrate that onto a launch vehicle. And once we're released from the launch vehicle, we go and we transport these satellites and drop them off at various locations. And once we're done dropping off all the satellites, we deorbit our vehicle. In some cases, we wouldn't deorbit our vehicle and have hosted payloads on board as well. Next slide, please. The service vehicles that we're offering our transportation services on include Vigoride, Ardoride, and Fervoride. Vigoride is the first one we're launching this year in the 4th quarter, which has a delta V around 1 kilometer per second. We're launching it with numerous CubeSats and satellites on board a Falcon 9. In 2022, in the second half, we're going to start launching Ardoride, which can take larger satellites all the way to geo or lunar orbits or Martian insertion orbits. And in 2024 timeframe, we're going to start launching Fervorides, which could take up to 10 tons and do deep space missions. Next slide, please. These are just some pictures of our progress. Since last year when we presented, we've built our first vehicle, which we're going to launch at the end of the year. You can see the image on the left. It's showing the fully assembled vehicle that just completed all of its environmental testing. We went through TVAC, vibe, etc. And all the payloads are in the process of being integrated on board right now so that we can launch it in a couple months. The images you see on the right are for our qual model for the next one that we're going to be launching. You can see these is not the full vehicle, but we will be starting to build that and launch it in the first quarter of next year as well, with numerous customers on board. With SpaceX, we actually broke the record in terms of number of customers on board one port for the mission. So we're very excited to have a really good customer traction and people excited about flying with us this year and next year. Next slide, please. This shows you our launch manifest. We launched our first vehicle actually summer of last year, called El Camino Real, which was a demonstration of the technologies we had built for propulsion. Our next demo, like I mentioned, is this year, and then we have another demonstration mission in the first quarter of next year. Following that, we have quarterly missions to sun-synchronous orbit using our vehicles and other destinations as well. Most of the flights you see shown here have been manifested on a Falcon 9. And we intend to increase our cadence, actually 2022 and beyond, to more than quarterly flights with numerous vehicles in each quarter. Next slide, please. The last thing I want to leave you with is our microwave electrothermal propulsion technology, which is what enables our transportation service. It's a technology that we built in-house that runs off of water as a propellant. And the way it works is that we have a resonant cavity. We inject microwave energy into this resonant cavity, and then we emit water vapor into it. And once the microwave energy interacts with the water vapor, it turns it into a plasma, and we put it out of a converging diverging nozzle in order to generate thrust. And what we end up with is a system that's very efficient, has a really good ISP, and you get a lot of thrust, so we can transport people fairly fast. So that is one of our key differentiators in the transportation market, and it enables us to be a sustainable company that could eventually, mine these resources in space and be, use in situ resource utilization. So I'm going to leave you with that, and excited to be back here to talk at this forum and hear about updates from everybody else. Thank you.
Josh?
Hi, so I'm Joshua Lecture, CEO and founder of Space Industries, background in mining and also having served on submarines in the Royal Australian Navy. So we participated in NASA iTechcycle 2 last year as a top 10 finalist, and since then we've been selected as a finalist for the Australian Space Awards as well. Next slide, thanks. So Space Industries is about critical resources. So our focus is resources that we can't produce on Earth, so that being helium-3. And in that process, we also can produce water on the lunar surface as well. So we're doing that to support the Artemis missions, as well as to build capabilities such as refueling in space. We've now got a number of IP progressing. Some of that is registered and some of that is trade secret, but we're developing products like critical resource storage, habitat, as well as our lunar resource extraction vehicle. So we have a full platform to produce the resource, store the resource, and also distribute it, including a fuel transfer port, which can be used on the lunar surface as well as in orbits. Next slide, thanks. Last year, we participated in NASA iTech. We got really good coverage from that. Thank you very much. And that allowed us to progress through to building a really strong foundation, securing the interest from some initial customers. And then earlier this year, we've just secured our first bit of venture capital and also progressed discussions with more off-tech partners, which is basically we supply the water on the moon or in orbit, and then the customers will purchase it. So we're currently progressing our development of our demonstration vehicle, and we're looking to have that active in Q1 of 2021. And then that'll be on display for about 2 months in Australia, and then we're bringing it over to Houston to do some testing and to have it on display there as well. So looking forward to that. We're looking at launching in 2023 and should be supplying water in in space and helium-3 on Earth within 2023, 2024 range. That's it for me. Thanks.
All right, it's my turn. So my name is Dan Nevius. I'm again with Analytical Space. Analytical Space is in the business of quickly moving imagery from remote sensing satellites back to the ground. Next slide, please. As probably a lot of you know, following the space industry, space-based remote sensing is experiencing really rapid expansion. Today in orbit, there are around 919. That's probably already an outdated number with some recent launches. But really growing very rapidly, about 25% per year at least, expected to get closer to 3,000 by 2025. And our view as a company is that kind of like GPS, geospatial intelligence coming off of these platforms is going to eventually be embedded in almost everything we do on Earth. So a huge demand for applications built on this intelligence from space. Next slide, please. But the problem that the industry has today is that these remote sensing satellites basically lack connectivity. They can only offload their data when they physically fly over a ground terminal. And so these ground terminals are put all over the planet, basically anywhere you can find a location for them. But because of geography and sometimes geopolitics of where you can land that data, about 70% of the time, these satellites are in communication blackout zones. And so that leads to pretty constrained environment for just the volume of imagery you can get down, but also introduces a pretty significant delay from when you request the image to when that image is actually on the ground to be used. So simply put, we just don't have access to real-time imagery off these platforms, and they're just very poorly utilized in terms of percent of the time that they're actually taking pictures. So next slide, please. So at Analytical Space, we're building a data relay network, a data transport layer in low Earth orbit to try to fill in those gaps of connectivity so that at any time these imaging satellites can be offloading their data, routing it to wherever is most appropriate on the surface. And so the impact of this is increase in total connectivity time from that 30% they get today to 100% of the time. And then also with some technology we're working on the optical communication side, an increase in average data rate. So not only do you get more time to offload, but you're also offloading higher volumes. And the impact that this has is a 6x increase in total volume of data downlinked, a pretty dramatic reduction in latency from order of hours to days down to sub-minute, if not faster. And then the removal of this geographical boundary where you can be anywhere on the planet where you request an image, and that image can be delivered to anywhere else on the planet. So effectively, we're trying to build the in-orbit communication infrastructure to enable real-time knowledge of what's happening on the surface of the planet. And to date, we've done 2 tech demo satellites to test out the basic architecture and technology. And now we're really moving into the network rollout, getting some of our first operational assets in space. I'm excited to be back here and looking forward to chatting with everybody.
So Dan, let me ask you: when your network is complete, how many satellites do you expect to be flying to make up your network?
Yeah, so it really will grow with the capacity that the industry needs. So there's a certain number to get us to kind of full geographic coverage, where at any point you can see the network, and that's around kind of the 36 or so satellites, depending on kind of where the market is in terms of which orbits have the highest density. But then after that, we can just copy paste that network on top of itself to add capacity on top as demand for downlink grows.
Right. So it struck me, and this is actually for the entire panel, it struck me when I invited you guys together that there's this emerging space economy that I think the general population may not be as aware of. And the thing that I found fascinating was that you guys didn't necessarily mention that NASA or the government in general, or even broader international governments, were necessarily your target audience. In fact, it strikes me that, Dan, you may need a tow from Negar's company, and Negar, you may be able to buy your water from Josh's company to power your satellites. And so we have sort of this beginning nascent sort of economy based in space, and yet not dependent upon the traditional Department of Defense and NASA customers. I think that's fascinating. So if each one of you would take a time, we'll go in the same order. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the hurdles you've had to overcome to get to where you're at? Because I find it fascinating. All you guys are right on the cusp. We're actually launching in the fourth quarter or have test articles in flight or whatever. And it just, the success that you've had is amazing, but I'm sure there have been some hurdles along the way. Negar?
Yeah, so I would say, there was a lot of hurdles along the way. Usually most startups, struggle with fundraising and things of that nature. I want to say that we were fortunate enough to be fine with that. We raised a $25 million Series A last year, and we've been continuing to raise since, even despite of the pandemic. So I would say the biggest hurdle was the pandemic, because it made us have to change the way we work. But we were able to overcome that hurdle very quickly. We had really good management and leadership team that kind of took action immediately. Everyone went home as soon as this hit. There was no delay. So I've been working home since March. All travel stopped. We have a very tight core team of people that have been working in the office to manufacture. So we've been fortunate enough not to have delays in terms of our manufacturing and assembly, integration, and tests. So we're still on track with that. And we basically overcame all the hurdles that we've been experiencing recently by making sure that we, abide by all the, recommendations from the county and, the safety officers and whatnot in terms of how many people we should have, how we should be social distancing, etc. Even we made momentous masks, and, tried to have a little bit of fun with it. But it's been really amazing to see how the team kind of rose up to the challenge, with, being willing to do Zoom meetings all the time and figuring out ways around how we can operate even despite the current conditions. And our customers have been very supportive and still continuing to work with us in spite of these times too. So I would say, yeah, that was the biggest hurdle we've come across, and we've been weathering it pretty well. So I'm happy to say that, all is well, and it was a great learning experience for all of us. And I hope that, things start getting better pandemic-wise going forward, but we've been fine. So I think these type of opportunities in life are ones that kind of bring out the best of the companies that, are good to survive, and then the ones that were not necessarily set up to succeed are the ones that kind of show during this time frame. So
thank you. Josh?
For us, obviously being an early stage startup, the funding does come down to being a bit of a hurdle, and you spend a lot of your time looking at the funding side of things opposed to doing actual development because you're limited. But I think for us, one of the biggest hurdles would be the education side. So educating that mining on the moon isn't going to be destruction and devastation and blowing up and digging holes, and when in fact with our vehicle, educating people or companies that the level of mining is the same as your footsteps walking along the beach. That's the impact in the sand on the beach is the same basically impact that our vehicle is going to have on the lunar surface. So it's not that bad. So educating, definitely one of the biggest things. And then the other hurdle is we're trying to involve or get venture customers from companies that aren't in the space industry, and with that there's a lot of people on the fence. So it's pretty much a 50-50. 50% of people understand that this stuff that we're doing is real, and 50% think it's sci-fi out of a science fiction movie or something. So that sort of comes back to a bit of the education side, but it's also coming up with really good strategies and models to be able to work with companies that want to engage in the space industry, but maybe their shareholders might get a bit scared of that. So it's coming up with strategies where everyone can win and work together, and we can get that technology transfer flow happening. And yeah, so that's probably from us the biggest hurdle, other than the funding side.
Yeah. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those assessments. I think that space startups definitely aren't for the faint of heart. Just thinking about all of the hurdles you have to get over to prove milestones, kind of the capital involved, and then the timing of all of it. It's always fun, one, to know that you have the deadline of when you run out of cash. Then often you also have a launch deadline to make progress so that you don't miss the launch and then have to pay for another launch and then immediately run out of cash. Right? So it's kind of the combination of all those things in parallel, really understanding what are the milestones you have to hit in order to unlock that next batch of resources, and then kind of managing the schedule and timeline around that. One of our more recent challenges is doing that in the context of the government contracting timeline, and just dealing with delays in whether they're COVID relating or just contracting related that adds significant uncertainty into that schedule. So we have to think about, if the contract signing gets delayed by 3 months, then what launch are we on? How does that kind of fit into the overall mission? So a lot of those pieces take a lot of fine attention, and then put you in a situation from a cash perspective that's challenging. And then all of that in parallel to hitting those milestones, so you can unlock that next batch of cash before you kind of hit that timeout.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, and we'll get to this maybe in a couple questions, but I'm wondering whether or not the problems you faced are the problems you thought you'd face a year or 2 years ago when you participated in NASA iTech. But let me skip over that for a moment. One of the reasons we do this panel discussion, and we do it now while the judges are out talking about this forum score, is because we have all of the entrepreneurs that are participating this cycle. They're sitting now where you guys were sitting a year or two ago. And I wonder if you have either sort of an observation of the benefit you got of participating in NASA iTech, or two, just a piece of wisdom that you would give to those companies that are sitting now where you were a year or two ago. Negar?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. I would say one thing that we learned was the benefits of working with the US government, whether it be NASA or the Department of Defense, Air Force, etc. The non-dilutive nature of the funding that you can obtain via SBIRs, SCTRs, and other programs that they have, AFWorks, etc., is really key. And it's not just because of the fact that you get the funding, but it's also, it helps shape your product line to ensure that what you develop is both suitable for commercial and government customers. Prior to working, being on the NASA iTech Challenge, we kind of had this vision of, working with the government was not worth it in the early stages of the company, because it would require a lot of effort, a lot of resources that we didn't have, being a really small startup. So we kind of put it on the back burner. But after going through this session last year, we kind of changed our mind on that, and we focused on it more heavily. And the results were that we were able to, win a NASA award. Actually, we're going to be launching the first Tropics Pathfinder satellite next year, in the middle of next year. So we're very excited about that. And we learned that we could help solve a lot of NASA's problems. Like, NASA Tropics was a mission that is kind of hard to launch because they need a very specific inclination. They need to be at 30 degrees with a series of CubeSats. So getting a dedicated launch for like 2-3 CubeSats didn't make sense in order to get the constellation to, measure precipitation over the tropics. That was the mission. And we learned that, we do provide a lot of good value to government customers such as NASA and others. So my word of advice to all of the startups going through iTech right now is, I'm sure just by the sheer fact of you being here that you do realize the value in that. It's to make sure that you account for all the potential opportunities that could come out of developing products for the government as you develop your product line, and make sure that you don't just focus on one market versus the other, and make sure you have a diverse set of customers, both from governments, civil, and Department of Defense side, in addition to commercial customers, and talk to all of them and make sure that your requirements encompass everybody. So that would be my word of advice, sir.
Thanks, Negar. Josh?
So NASA iTech for us was definitely valuable. Being based in Australia, the space industry here is quite limited, so it gave us a sense of credibility being selected by NASA iTech, which then helped us to build our network. That's the second main thing that we got, I think, out of NASA, was the ability to build a network really quickly. So we got in front of key people in the exposure, which was pretty good. One of the other things I think for us, maybe with what we're doing with the focus with NASA on lunar water, has made it a little bit easier for us to get some traction. But I think we might have underestimated a little bit how difficult the space industry is. Sometimes I think it's not actually the space industry, it's sometimes the people we deal with. But some companies are quite large, and it just takes time to get things to happen. So patience is quite important. But yeah, if you've got a technology that has a demand, also being able to relay that demand and show that you have customers, and that's quite important as well. So yeah, that's sort of the takes from when we did NASA iTech to now. Yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Josh. Dan, we were having a little bit of issues with your audio a moment ago, so go ahead and give us the best shot at your answer.
All right, can you hear me okay now? Okay. Yeah, I would agree with Negar and Josh. I think that one key piece of advice I'd give is talk in advance to the people who may be your investors for the next round, to really understand where is that bar that you have to hit. A lot of people will talk to you in advance just to start building the relationship, but it really helps you understand where do they view the key risk in your business. In some businesses, it's different, where the technology may be mature, so there's less of a question there about success, but the market may be uncertain. So you should put your efforts in focusing on validating that there's a market demand, that people will pay for it, that there's a business there. And then in other cases, it may be very clear that there's a market there, you're selling an established product, and it's just a new technical approach that allows you to do it better, in which case it makes sense to put your resources into proving out that technical piece of it. And so every business is a little bit different in terms of what they're looking to see you validate before you get to that next stage of capital. And then really leverage NASA as a partner in that, to, one, establish credibility. There's no group on the planet that's more credible in this space, that if you say you're working with NASA and you kind of have that technical validation, then that goes a long way. And then also to Negar's point, there's a lot of great programs today where NASA and the DoD are really leaning into this public-private partnership, using commercial, really leveraging all of that private capital flowing into the space to have a faster innovation cycle, kind of hit their mission goals a lot quicker than they otherwise could. And so look for those opportunities for non-dilutive capital, but know that the VCs also want to see that dual use approach. Some of them don't want to invest in a defense or kind of NASA contractor. They want to see that this goes beyond the government market. There's an exciting commercial market where you can leverage these relationships and kind of this upfront capital that the government has to help you get going, but it builds into something much larger than being just a defense or government contractor. So try to find those overlaps where working with the government takes you down that path, but doesn't suck you into specific requirements that aren't necessarily helpful for the broader picture. Really try to keep it as dual use as possible would be my advice.
I appreciate you saying that, Dan. That's sort of a commercial for NASA iTech. That's sort of our sweet spot where sort of government and private industry meet. But it does strike me that starting a business of any kind is difficult. And when you try and do something in space, whether you're dealing with NASA, the FAA, or the FCC, there's an added layer of difficulty associated with dealing with regulators and keeping a good relationship with them. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of strategy you guys employ to sort of keep a good relationship with the various regulators that you have to interact with?
Yeah, so I don't mind going first. We actually, in the early stages, we hired some consultants to help with figuring out the strategy in terms of, FCC filings and applications and things of that nature. And as we matured and once we closed our Series A, we hired in-house legal counsel to address that. So we have a lawyer in-house that's dedicated to doing things in the nature of, any type of filing, working with FCC, NOAA, and other regulatory bodies, in addition to export compliance and everything else. So that really helped because prior to having the in-house, we were going out of house to consultants to help with that. So that's the strategy we've taken, and having that resource in-house that I can go to at any time with any of those type of questions, and the whole team can ping really helps in terms of making sure that we're in compliance and we submit the application in time, fill it out properly, and cross all the T's and dot all the I's to make sure that our mission is going to be a success and not stopped by regulations because we violated something we didn't realize.
For space industries, keep it quite simple. So just direct contact on a one-on-one basis. I try not to take that path of the legal route or having other people involved. I like to do it myself and be on top of all of that side. If it comes to any arrangements, contracts, agreements, definitely passing that via legal and getting the advice required. I think as well, it's good to have a strong advisory team. So the sooner that you can get that with some good industry experience, that makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, we've also taken the advisory board approach where we have some really great space policy and regulatory experts just to make sure that we cover our blind spots and we don't kind of fall into a case that we didn't know we needed to be thinking about. But then also engaged very early on, especially on the FCC side, because we were looking at doing things that weren't typical or hadn't really been done before, looking at cross-linking in different frequency ranges that weren't necessarily on the ITU tables as a kind of pre-thought out case. And then really trying to understand also what are the challenges that the regulators are facing in their jobs, and are there ways that we can actually be helpful to the ecosystem using some of the technology we're looking at. And so in the FCC conversation, we kind of think with them about how can we help with spectrum management, right? If we could receive data in one frequency, but then translate it into another frequency that's less crowded, does that help the whole ecosystem? And that now everybody's not trying to go down in the same frequency range. We can kind of spread it across the frequency range or across geographies where they don't have to go down to the same site. And then thinking forward to optical communication, if we help kind of push the standard there or push the adoption of that technology, then that pulls a lot of people just out of the radio frequency range in general. And so we viewed it more as them being a stakeholder in more of the sense that they're regulating us, but in thinking about what are the challenges that they're facing as regulators that are indicative of the challenges that the industry is facing in the area that they regulate. And then could we get some of their thoughts, or at least their feedback on what we're doing and whether that would be helpful, whether we have technical solutions to the regulatory challenges. So we view them very much as kind of key stakeholders and almost customers as well, in addition to helping us make sure that we're good actors and and that we're not going to be the last space company to come along because we screw everything up for everybody else.
Thank you, guys. I see actually that Harry Partridge who's the chief technologist from Ames Research Center, has rejoined us, which tells me that the judges have a decision. I want to thank you three for joining us today. It is really clear that there's some interesting things going on in the new private space economy. I really hope to hear about some strategic partnership between the three of you. Josh, I want you to be selling your water to Negar. And for the audience, just realize that Dan and Josh in particular really paid the price to be here. They're actually both in Australia, so it's about 3 o'clock in the morning where they're at. So thank you all for joining us. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Harry.
Hello, I'm going to go a little bit before Harry here, and I just want to cut in and tell all the companies, thank you so much for the work that you've done, and getting to the top 10 is an achievement in itself, and all the work you guys have put in was really phenomenal. It was great to work with all of you, and now, as Tom said, we are going to declare the winners, and the winners will be receiving one of these beautiful NASA iTech trophies at some point in the near future.
Again, I'm Harry Parker, Chief Technologist at Ames, and it's my pleasure to announce the winners today. I'd first like to thank all the judges. The judging, I thought, was, we had a diverse set of opinions, and I really appreciate the investor and the external input on the technologies. All of the presenters were excellent. I thought the presentations at this time were incredible quality. All of the companies that's presented received significant support from at least some of the judges for their technology and position. So it really was a very difficult job to judge. The judging period of time was short. But anyway, so the final decision, we selected 3 companies, Augmented Vision. So it's a virtual retina display. It has potential applications for NASA, particularly using it in spacesuits for displaying things that are of interest to us. Could potentially lighten spacesuits because we don't need as many display, particularly on curved structures. The second was from Mojo. It's a augmented reality. I really like their vision for a future where computing becomes invisible. I thought that vision is that integration of the augmented reality and stuff into our mission scenario has a lot of potential. And the third is Autolift. They have a technology to treat the symptoms of vertigo. It is unique. For the NASA application, it is the treatment of motion sickness, and it has applications to astronauts. But for commercial space, for space tourism, motion sickness is likely to be a significant issue, particularly if someone's only going up for a week. You don't want to spend $1 million or $2 million and not be able to enjoy it. So this has a lot of potential for NASA. And I'd like to thank all of the presenters. I thought they were all excellent. And I hope that we can follow up with all of you in the next few months. Thank you very much.
And so with that, let's go ahead and have Amalgamated Vision come on up and you can give your response.
I have to tell the audience this is, without question, the most significant recognition and validation that our small and scrappy company has had in our decade of existence. So we have a huge debt of gratitude to NASA and to the iTech program. I don't want to embarrass the members of the iTech program, but I really feel I want to name you because you gave so much to this. Kira Blackwell and Robin Ford and Ollie George and Dave Shelton and Seth Robinson and Harla Sherwood and of course Max Briggs. A particular shout out to Jen Consalvo and Tom Flake. Our presentation would not have been anything like it was without them. Thank you. I want to congratulate all the other companies. Their technology was so impressive that we joked that maybe we should take whatever money we have left in our bank account and invest it in the other companies. Congratulations to you all. I'm sure you will all do well. Nobody gets anywhere alone. I want to thank our friends Chandra Devim and Scott Edgar, who supported us and encouraged us to enter this contest. To the man who brought all our significant IP through the USPTO and internationally, Lou Horvath and Bill Hilton, thank you. And I'd like to thank the AV team because nobody gets anywhere alone. My world is easy. I just say thank you and they do the incredible work. I'd like to thank David Kessler, who Optical Designs accomplished what people said couldn't be done, and Randy Sprague, who pushed us. I'd like to thank Alex Tokman for reshaping our business model and our business foresight. Thank you. I'd like to especially thank 4 people who've been there from the beginning, without pay, just out of belief. Steve Rittner and Jay Edelman, Paula Katkin and Scott Spiro, thank you to all of you for believing in this. I'd also like to thank my family for their support, and my mom, who's no longer with us. I'd like to shout out to my 2 daughters, Rachel and Eliza, whose enthusiasm is unbridled. And thank you, girls. And mostly I'd like to thank my wife, Katie, who I could have included on the AV team above, who's believed in AV and believed in me and supported me all of these years, even when things weren't always going like we thought. And who also now the whole world will know, back in 2008 when we lost track and we were looking at other light sources and looking at other light paths, and we kind of lost our way, looked up at me and said, honey, why don't you just shine the damn light in your eyes like you wanted to from the very beginning? So NASA, you really owed this all to my wife. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all very much.
Thank you, Adam. Mojo, who's going to make the acceptance?
Hi, this is Drew Perkins, the CEO of Mojo. I would also like to thank NASA iTech, all of the judges, all the listeners and the audience as well. What we're taking on here is just so incredible and broad. We're taking on so many technologies all at once. A lot of people call what we're doing a moonshot. Personally, I call it a star shot. And we're just really happy and excited that the people that really do moonshots and space travel here recognize it as such. So we'd like to thank also my team. You don't pull this thing off with a person, a small set of people. It takes an amazing team of people to pull off this set of technologies that we're pulling off. I'd like to thank our investors who have put roughly $160 million into this company and this project already. I'd like to thank all of our customers in government and everywhere else that believe in us and are helping us get there. And I'd also like to specifically thank Kira Blackwell for giving us the chance to get into the iTech program and being here. So thank you, everybody. And we're just so excited and really look forward to interacting with NASA and all of the missions in the future as we build this product. Thanks.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled to have been named one of the winners, considering the cohort that was here. It's great to have been been among those who competed with me. So, first, thanks to everyone who did compete, because without you guys being in the competition, this really means something because of just how great the competition was. So I'm glad everyone was here to participate, and thank you so much to the NASA people who really helped us formulate our story, kind of push us to make some material that we had not done as far as like video and crafting that story. And of course, to everyone who helped Otolith to get where it's at. The Halcyon Incubator in Washington, D.C., our technology would not exist without them, without Dr. Sachiko Kuno. Taking a chance on someone who had a vague idea that if you interacted with the inner ear, you could prevent motion sickness and vertigo without any sort of research backing it up, without any sort of predicate research. She took a big risk on me. I had mentors, I had investors who all took a risk on me without any real trust other than thinking that this could be if this could solve something, it would be big. And so thank you to our investors. And then of course, my co-founders who I would have never been able to get off the ground without. Tom Hardart, Jack Daggett, Didier Depereaux, and John Akers, of course. And then lastly, of course, to my wife, who has allowed me to go without a paycheck for a long time while I built my dream. And this is a great validation. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Max, back to you.
Congratulations to the whole, to all the participants and especially to the winners. Before we head out, I want to just give a big thank you to the NIA team. You guys have done a great job. This was my first event, and between the interactions that we had with the companies, but also all of the facilitating that's been done, all of the work and the coaching, and quite frankly, you guys holding my hand through this as I learned it too. I really appreciate all of you guys. And this was a great experience for me, and I think it's been a great experience for everybody. So thank you guys. I want to make sure that anybody who's watching the live stream right now, that you guys are aware that we have our Cycle 2 event coming up on October 15th and 16th. So please join us for that, where we will have another round of 10 companies showing us how their dual-use technology can benefit NASA while still stimulating commercial markets. Thank you.